Okay, well, I think it's probably time to get started. So thank you very much to everybody who's joined us today for this live information session. I'm delighted to welcome you all, wherever you are in the world. We're going to be looking today at something that, as education consultants, we're asked about all the time. How can I secure a place at Oxford or Cambridge? When parents are looking at private school options, when students are looking at university options, this is something that is often on people's minds. You know, how can I get into Oxbridge? If families are looking at sixth form options, often one of their questions is, well, what percentage of students get Oxbridge offers? So today we're going to really have a look in depth this question. So what is all the fuss about? You know, why are Oxford and Cambridge so revered and so sought after among students all over the world? And how exactly you maximise your chances of securing a place at one of these universities? Today we're really delighted to be joined by Dr. Julian Davies, the principal of Abbey College, Cambridge, one of the most successful private sixth form colleges in the UK, and also by our university consultant expert, Rob Butler, who's advised many hundreds of students on university applications and secured for many places in Oxford and Cambridge. So together they're going to answer a number of questions and unpick the whole process, the application process. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, but meanwhile, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if you would like to ask questions along the way. We have our consultant Duncan Quirk in the background who will be answering questions, and then he'll put them to the panelists at the end as well. I'd like now to ask Rob perhaps to say a few words about himself. We've got a little synopsis on the screen there. But Rob, perhaps you could tell us more about your experience and yeah.
Sure. Well, welcome everybody. Greetings from Oxford, which is where I operate from. I've been advising students on university entry, as Mary has said, for a great many years. And not just Oxbridge applicants. In fact, I help anybody who wants to maximize their chances of getting a university place. One thing I also offer is mentorship for students, and I have Oxford Education Advisors, which I run here in Oxford, has its own UCAS centre, so we can actually submit applications for you. This is quite useful for students who have left school, that aren't attached to a school any longer, or just want a fresh start. And one of the things I do is do a review of the student situation. When they come to me, I do a review of their situation, get to know them in depth, and set them on a fresh pathway. That might actually include, one student springs to mind who actually failed to get into Cambridge on her first attempt, came to us, and we managed to get together a very successful application to Oxford in the following year. We can do things like that. Sometimes students have made a wrong choice, and they spend a year at university not very happy, so they will come and ask my advice about what they might do next. So that kind of sums up what I do. I've been head of, the other thing I should add is that for 12 years I was head of UCAS at a small college in Oxford. So UCAS is very much close to, and university application in general, very much close to the heart of my activities.
Great, thank you very much, Rob. We'll be coming back to you for a lot more tips and information later in the webinar. Julian, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and about Abbey College now, please?
Thank you, Mary, and welcome. Thank you, Rob. So my name is Dr. Julian Davies, and I'm the principal here at Abbey College in Cambridge. So you've got an Oxford and a Cambridge speaker with you today. I've been the principal here for quite a number of years, since 2002, in fact. So I've seen this institution change quite considerably. We are now a boarding school for largely international students. So about 90% of our students are from other countries. They all board here with us. We've got 400 beds in this campus. The campus itself is only 5 years old, and I had the privilege of helping to design the thing. So I've got a different kind of a experience in that regard. The work we do, though, is to help students get to university. That's really what Abbey College Cambridge does. It helps children, sometimes from the UK, most often from overseas, to go from their previous high schools and to get to a top university. So we devote our time to educating children largely through A-level, which is of course the most standard entry route, perhaps you'd say, to university. We also have GCSE and foundation courses and English language. So there's a large component of what we do, which is about helping children achieve very high grades, so that the pass rates are very pleasing for the children here. But there's another dimension to the work we do, which is probably more relevant for this conversation today. And that's helping children to make strong applications to university. It strikes me that not enough emphasis is possibly put on the preparation needed, particularly for Oxford and Cambridge, in year 12 and in early year 13. Students assume perhaps doing well in subjects of their choice at A-level is going to help them get in. It will, of course. There's a lot more that we feel you can do. So what I'll talk about later in the program is about a couple of the initiatives that we've added in here that I consider help the children to broaden their knowledge before applying to university and deepen their knowledge in certain areas too. So there we are. Thank you so much for inviting me on this, Mary. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
So delighted to have you. So just briefly, what we're going to cover today. First of all, we'll talk about the Oxbridge difference. So what is it that makes Oxford and Cambridge stand out from other universities in terms of the teaching style, the application process, and generally the whole university experience, because they are different from most other universities. We'll look at the application process, which is again slightly different to that of other universities. So this will be relevant for current A-level or IB diploma students, or indeed prospective sixth form students. We'll then be asking Julian specifically really about the sort of programs that colleges like Abbey College Cambridge can put in place to really support Oxbridge applicants. And we'll look at some tips at the end to guide you through this process. So, Rob, perhaps we could come to you first and just ask you why would you apply to Oxbridge? What is it that these universities have to offer?
Well, the first thing, of course, is centuries of tradition. The history dates back close to 1,000 years. The first colleges were completed in the 1200s, back in the Middle Ages. And they've achieved this worldwide reputation for academic excellence, attracting the best students, the best academics, best teachers. They've moved from being closely associated with the church. They originally specialized in educating clergy, reflected, of course, in many of the college names, such as Trinity, Corpus Christi, St. John's. Then, of course, we have the association, I would say, with the as the centuries have gone on, we have association with public schools. Many benefactors have set up scholarships for people from certain schools to enter Oxford and Cambridge. But now I would say that there's a strong sense of a drive for inclusivity at Oxford and Cambridge. They seem to do a lot to with their outreach programs to attract people from state schools. And of course, they very much welcome international students. This, of course, makes the market for a place, competition for a place, much more severe. I think one reason for applying to Oxford and Cambridge is that they are very wealthy educational establishments worth, billions and billions of pounds, and many of the colleges are huge landowners, and this has a kind of knock-on effect, I think, because there are just the most fantastic facilities at these universities, research facilities, libraries, in addition to the central university libraries, research libraries. You have excellent faculty libraries. In addition to that, each college has its own library, and these are absolutely outstanding, a lot of them. Well, the vast majority, I would say. So fantastic facilities. That's and then we move on to what everybody knows, is that Oxford and Cambridge are strongly associated with success and achievement. And you can see on the screen here that well, we've just taken a handful. We could go on and on, couldn't we? Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Stephen Hawking, of course, was associated with both Oxford and Cambridge. And then recent achievements like the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. I'm quite proud that it came from Oxford, to be associated with that. I happen to know the person that set up the lab, but that's another matter. Then we have politics and economics. You could say that if your ambition is to be the UK's Prime Minister at some point in your life, then applying to Oxford would be a very good plan, because Oxford has produced 28 British Prime Ministers, including 5 of the last 7. That's Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, David Cameron, Theresa May, and the current incumbent, of course, Boris Johnson. And then we have this fantastic association with literature and the arts. People like Shelley, Wordsworth, Tolkien, Wilde, and people, Philip Pullman. And then, yes, the world of entertainment, theatre, TV. Yes, David Attenborough, Monty Python, that produced both Oxford and Cambridge. People from both Oxford and Cambridge were part of Monty Python, of course. And not forgetting, of course, the fantastic Cambridge Footlights that's provided so much to the world of comedy. So all in all, yes, it's a sort of byword for success and achievement. Moving on to the next.
Yeah, great, thanks very much, Rob. Yeah, Julian, I don't know if you'd like to add anything there about perhaps some of your students and what's motivated them to apply, and what successes indeed they've achieved through studying at Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah, the driver is summing all of that up is reputation. Is why they're going. The extraordinary global reputation that these universities have, and the respect that graduates have when they go back home. I mentioned most of our children have come here with the aim of going to universities. So that is absolutely the key driver of knowing that when they go home, they're carrying with them a degree from a university that every employer has heard of and everyone gives the highest respect to. So there's from the students here, there's an eye to future career that's part of this decision, quite a strong driver actually in terms of employability and how sought after they will be. So, you know, one example, a student from Vietnam went to Cambridge University, graduated, and ended up immediately being snapped up by a company in Cambridge called Arm, which is a chip manufacturing company, very large company, global company now, and a salary that frankly would make your eyes water for a recent graduate, because of the demand for graduates from these top universities and their employability actually. So that's probably, distilling it, the most important driver for the children at my school is the eye to the future opportunities these very top universities give.
Thank you very much. Just to go a little bit deeper into the differences. So what makes these universities different in terms of the student experience? Obviously, you know, we've talked about the reputation and the success that people have had there, but actually, what is it like to be a student at Oxford or Cambridge? Well, perhaps you could sort of go into the points on the slide a little bit and just talk a bit in a bit more detail there.
Well, I mean, I presume many people have visited Oxford and Cambridge, but they are, in addition to all the facilities I mentioned, they are beautiful cities with stunning architecture, steeped in history, and with lovely green spaces in the heart of the colleges. College gardens tend to be very well maintained. They're lovely places to sit, read, talk, reflect. There are, you know, rivers that run through the towns, which again add to what you might call the romantic quality of the location. And you probably know punting is a very popular activity. But more specific to the learning process, we have the collegiate system, and this is a standout feature of Oxford and Cambridge. When you're admitted to either university, you're admitted not just to the university, but also to a college of that university, to which you'll belong throughout your time there, and indeed with which you'll have a lifetime association. Oxford has about 45 colleges and Cambridge 31. Majority admit undergraduates, and the majority offer most subjects as well. There are some that are exclusive to graduate students, and 2 in Cambridge that are exclusive to women. And so what is a college? College is a small collective community, a collection of buildings, often very historic, attractive. Within each college, you'll find student accommodation, common rooms, cafes, bars. Every college has a college bar, computer facilities, and as I said, a substantial library. There are also, tutors have rooms there, and there are offices for staff members as well. Colleges have about, well, it depends on the size, they vary in size, about 300 to 500 students at any one time, both undergraduates and postgraduate students, studying a range of subjects, broad range of subjects. So you are in contact with students studying different things. This makes for a very interesting environment. So you're meeting people doing, you know, you're mixing with, if you're an art student, you're mixing with scientists, etc. So you get this ready-made community when you get there, and it makes it much easier to settle in. And there are lots of activities based within colleges, social events, intercollegiate rivalries, such as rowing, of course, is a dominant feature of Oxford and Cambridge. And very importantly, you are taught in the colleges by tutors via the tutorial system. That's what it's known in Oxford. It's called supervision in Cambridge. So you have, so this is in addition to faculty-based teaching. You'll be taught in the faculties to which you belong. There will be lectures. But in addition to that, and of course, scientists will be working in laboratories as well. So in addition to that, you will have tutorials in your college with a tutor that generally will belong to your college. And this will be either one-to-one or more often than that in small groups. And this obviously is fantastic because it affords direct contact with experts in your subject, encouraging exchange of views. And just jumping ahead a little bit to the application process, one of the important aspects of the application process that we'll discuss in due course is, of course, the interview. And I think at the interview, the admissions tutor will be looking to see if the actual candidate is somebody that's interesting to talk to, that can come up with ideas, has got independence of thought, because this will be translated into the day-to-day experience in college if you're actually lucky to get a place. I think it's fair to say that the workload in Oxford and Cambridge is intense. You're often required to produce a couple of significant pieces of work per week. And but having said that, the terms are very short. I mean, 8-week terms is considerably less than, I think most universities have 10-week terms. So 8 weeks is not long. It means that you're only there really for 6 months of the year. But yes.
Great, thanks very much, Rob. I'd just like to sort of add a few words from my own experience there. I was at New College in Oxford studying feminine history quite some time ago now. I don't think the teaching system has changed. I mean, it certainly hasn't changed over several hundred years probably. Just to sort of reiterate what Rob said about this sort of tutorial system, it is very intense. And we talk about you go to read a subject rather than study a subject. And there is a huge amount of reading. A personalized tutorial system is fantastic. And of course, you get that one-to-one time or small group time with a very experienced academic, someone who's really sort of leading in their field. But it does put huge pressure on you as a student because you have to turn up very well prepared to that tutorial every week, probably with an essay that you've written, which will have involved reading a lot of books, looking at all the research and making sure you're sort of up to date with what's current in research. So it is a very pressured 8 weeks. You have to be on top of things all the time. So that is something that you really have to think about if you want to apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You have to really love your subject. You have to be willing to spend that time reading. And also, just to sort of reiterate also what you said, Rob, about the collegiate system, you do become a member of a small academic community within a very, very large institution. And I think that is something very special about these universities, that you have that community straight away. As you said, of students who are studying a wide range of subjects. And that's something, well, of course, you experience that to a certain extent at other universities. Of course, you're going to be mixing with students studying a range of different degree programs. But there is something quite special about being in that community. It's almost like a boarding school for grown-ups. And, where you're taking your meals. And the other thing is the chapels. You mentioned the religious connection, but, the most wonderful chapels as well in all the colleges with choir services and things, and all these very old traditions that actually do add significant amount to the experience you have there as a student. So moving on now, Well, perhaps you could talk to us a little bit more about the application process. So I seem to have gone backwards on the slides there.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, bear with me for a moment. So the application process is a little bit different for Oxford and Cambridge. If you could just really quite brief, I mean, most of the information's on here, but if you could pick out
Sure.
any salient points, Rob, that would be brilliant.
Of course, yeah. Well, on one level, it's no different to any UCAS application in the sense that Oxford or Cambridge just will be one of your choices, one of 5 choices you can make when you're applying to university, and you just enter it on in your UCAS form as normal. However, you can't apply for both. You have to choose either Oxford or Cambridge. And yes, I've sort of put a timeline here in this particular slide. Obviously, choose your course. It's better to choose one course to apply for, because you'll be much more convincing. You'll make a much more convincing case for your enthusiasms if you apply for one course. Choose either Oxford or Cambridge. That might be dependent upon whether your course is available at Oxford or Cambridge. I say that because there are some courses that are unique to both institutions. I'm thinking, for instance, of PPE at Oxford, which you can't do at Cambridge. And at Cambridge, you can do a course called Human, Social and Political Sciences, HSPS abbreviation. So it's about making a careful choice. You then need to choose a college. Now, as I said earlier, most colleges offer most subjects. So the chances are that your subject will be available at any college. However, there are some restrictions on that. And you need to be aware of them. So you need to do some research or seek some guidance about that. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to find out if there is an entrance test for the subject for which you are applying. It does not apply to every subject, but if there is an entrance test, you need to make sure that you register before October the 15th. And the one thing I should maybe have said at the beginning is the major difference between applying to Oxford and Cambridge, Oxford and Cambridge and the other universities is that you need to make your application before October the 15th. The normal UCAS deadline is in January. They seem to have moved the date. Now it was January 15th. It now seems to be the 26th. Whether they will keep that in forthcoming years will remain to be seen. But anyway, so you need to apply before October the 15th, and you need to register for your entrance test before October the 15th. Then a week later, if you apply to Cambridge, you have to do another, complete another form, which is known as an SAQ, a supplementary application questionnaire, which calls for some more details. And I believe you have an opportunity to expand a little on your personal statement. One thing you need to do in the SAQ is actually enter any marks you've achieved in public exams up to that point, which you don't need to do if you're applying to Oxford. Then in early November, the entrance tests take place. In fact, they've been happening this very day for this particular. There were some yesterday, but there are some taking place today. And this will be followed by the submission of written work. Some subjects, not every subject, but some subjects require you to submit written work. Interestingly, at Cambridge, sometimes depending on the college you're applying to, you are required to submit written work in your subject, and other colleges don't require written work for that same subject. So that kind of thing needs to be looked into. Then the next part of the process, very important. If you've got through all those hurdles, if your application is has been warmly received by the universities, then you're invited to an interview in early to mid-December. I think at the moment, most of these are taking place online, as I understand it. But I don't quote me on that, but some of them may be taking place in person. Normally, you would actually go to the college, you would be accommodated for several nights, and you would have an interview at your first choice college and at one randomly selected. And then the decision on your application will take place in January. That's it.
Thank you very much, Rob. So just to sort of summarise how an advisor can assist you through this process. Rob's given us an outline of the actual procedure. It can still seem quite overwhelming, particularly if you're not familiar with the UK education system and the whole university application process. So what Rob or another external advisor can help with is to look at your academic profile, help you develop that. Rob mentioned he can offer mentoring services as well, and a lot of external consultants will do this and sort of guide you through your sixth form years, your subject choices, talk to you about the most appropriate universities to apply to, whether or not it may not be Oxford or Cambridge, they may not be the best institutions, and I think there's something very important to bear in mind. Obviously there is the reputation and all those things we've talked about, but the key thing is, is this the right place for you? They offer the right course? Is it the teaching style that's going to be right for you? So all these things are something that an advisor will talk through with you. If necessary, we've mentioned these additional tests and things that you may have to take. It can be very helpful to have a subject specialist tutor involved at some stage in the process. And this can be particularly the case if you're coming from a different system where perhaps you haven't covered the same content, or there may be areas that you really need a bit of extra support with. A key factor in applying for any university is your personal statement. And again, sometimes it can be useful to have an external view on that with some specific guidance to how to create the best impression with your statement. Preparation for tests and interviews, always helpful. A lot of you know you don't need to prepare, just come be yourself. But actually, everybody knows that preparation is key, and it gives you confidence as well if you know what to expect and you feel well prepared. And again, particularly for students outside the UK system or perhaps new to it, all the admin and communications can be quite overwhelming. So this is again something that an advisor can help with. So Education Advisors offers very comprehensive school and university placement service. So we'll provide details at the end of the webinar, but if you have any questions, please do get in touch with us about that. So we are going to move on now to talk about how independent schools and colleges can particularly help you with your university applications, in particular to Oxford and Cambridge. Every good private, or indeed every good state school, will provide the very best support that it can do for students in terms of their university applications. If a student has the ambition to study at a top university, schools will do whatever they can, I'm sure, to support those students. But however, there's no doubt that some schools do this more successfully than others because they have the experience or the structure in place to really provide optimal support. So I'd like to hand over to Julian now to talk a little bit more about how you support students at Abbey College in terms of Oxbridge applications. So over to you, please, Julian.
Thank you, Mary. So yes, we as I mentioned, we are largely international student body, so that's our context, and that has what led us to developing some programs that are our own, if you like, because we realized some international students come from different understandings of what the process is to get to university. For some countries, perhaps it's just the results of your exams that are required. And in the UK, for these universities, as we've been hearing, it's a lot more than just the results of your exams. You have to be able to show that you're the right person for these incredible universities. So we developed a couple of programs. I'll talk you through what we've done and why, really. So this is a map, if you like, a timeline, if you were to join in September next year. So if you're in year 12 in September 2022, it maps you down to going into year 13 in 23, into the autumn then. So what we, some years ago, what we introduced to our school, it was an academic enrichment program. So as is common with many schools in the UK, the extracurriculum program here is very strong. So many schools share the understanding of the importance of extracurricular, of developing your interests in your sporting activities or in art or drama beyond the classroom. These things are very common in UK schools, very well thought of and important in your development as a teenager, that you do take part in activities and you start to make friends in other parts of the school because of a shared love of music or of perhaps debate club and so on. So that's a standard feature of schools in the UK, and it's important that you take part in the offers that the school makes for you in these extracurricular. So we added if you like, an extracurricular academic program. So an enrichment program that happens in the evenings here. So my teaching body very kindly give one evening every 3 weeks each. So across 60 staff, that's quite a commitment that we've got now, whereby after supper in our school, we have various enrichment activities going on, delivered and coordinated and hosted by teachers. So that means sometimes delivered, they actually might deliver an academic enrichment program, a talk. They might coordinate, perhaps for doctors, medics, students. We'll get GPs in the evening to talk. It might be Cambridge University math students. We tend to have them in to talk to our students. It might be coordinating a visit. So we're in Cambridge and there are external seminars that happen on occasion here that we go to. So the reason we introduced this academic enrichment is very much to show students the importance of looking beyond the curriculum. And that's what this is really all about, is you need to lift your eyes beyond the textbook, beyond the A-level syllabus, to the wider world of your subject and others. So what we hope to do here is broaden, we add breadth to the way you're thinking about what year 12 is. Year 12 isn't simply your A-level subjects. It is an opportunity for a science student to go to the Judge Institute and listen to an economics lecture. Or it's an opportunity for an engineer to come and spend an hour listening to the psychology teacher talk about placebo, or the economics teacher talk about game theory to biology students. So there's a lot of things that cross over, other areas that are done to broaden. What we know about broadening your educational sort of views is it is helpful to you if you have understandings and interests in other areas. That gives you better perspectives of your own area, because you can hop into other areas and borrow your understanding when forming your ideas in your subject. So breadth is very valuable. So that's what the Abbey Inspires program is, chosen very carefully, that title, to inspire you to look beyond. So that's what we do in year 12 from September. It goes on all the way through. Actually, it's for all students across the school all the time. It just so happens if you start in year 12, that will be your first experience. From January of year 12, we're now starting the calendar year's build up to university application. So if you think from January to December, that's a substantial proportion of the work for applying to university, the application and the work after. So that calendar year starts from year 12 across the summer into year 13. Now we add another program that we've created, and we called it the Abbey College Pre-Degree Diploma. So it's a diploma course that's part of your timetable that runs from January all the way through to the end of the calendar year. The reason we've done that is because it actually gives you time that you know every week you will have on your timetable. So it's allocated time that you and the teachers involved have for this. So it's not something we're asking you to do out by yourself, find the time, we're structuring the time. And rather than looking at breadth, which is what the Abbey Inspires does, where you're choosing which areas to learn more about, this is where we focus now on depth. So for the pre-degree diploma session, you will tell us what your interests are. Okay, so you might say, well, I'm quite interested in law and politics, or in art and design. So from that January of year 12, you will, on your timetable, go to a class with the other students in year 12 who have that interest for their university choice. So all of the medic students, all of the engineers, all of the lawyers are in different parts of the school with different tutors. The aim then is, of course, to increase the depth of your knowledge about that subject and about how to apply. That tends to come a little later. Initially, we're really focusing on what you would call knowledge building. Some of that is direct instruction from teachers, but most of it isn't. Most of it is facilitating your work in improving, increasing your knowledge in your chosen area. Some of the areas, of course, at university, like medicine and engineering, which for us are very popular, some of them don't have A-levels directly associated. So if you prepare for an engineering degree, your A-level choices are likely to include mathematics and physics, maybe another subject in the sciences. You won't study at A-level directly very much about engineering explicitly. So that's what this does for you. It gives you direct components of engineering that you'll be talking about and hearing about from your teacher, or medicine or law. Those three subjects, very little A-level direct instruction. So that's quite an important facet of it as well. As time goes on, you are reading in that group. So we've already heard the importance of reading and how intense Oxford and Cambridge are. So our program puts the books in your hand. So rather than saying to you, go and find some engineering books, we'll say, well, here's the engineering library. So what are you going to read and tell us about in 2 weeks' time? What project are you 4 students going to talk about? So that's what this course is for. It's a course for all year 12. It culminates for the year 12 in the summer term in June, when we have a conference in the school. So all of the year 12 students work in a team during that build-up on their subject to give a talk, a presentation to their year 12 peers on a subject in their area of interest. So a doctor might talk about a medical topic in their group of 5. So that's pre-degree diploma. While that's going on in year 12, we also identify in year 12 the students who are interested in the Oxbridge program. So that essentially is an additional component of a similar nature, but more intense. So we're introducing children to this concept that you've heard about the intensity of Oxford and Cambridge. So we're not mimicking the actual intensity, we're showing, well, actually, now we're going to expect you to read a little bit more and feedback in a tutorial style meeting. So we'll have 3 students and a tutor in those sessions, rather than maybe 1 teacher and 12 students in the other group sessions. So it's knowledge building, but at a higher level, more quickly for the Oxbridge students. So you feel like there are 2 programs that we've chosen to take part in here, one for all year 12, a second for the year 12s who also are looking at Oxbridge. Incidentally, we have an allied program for medicine as well. That's another course that requires perhaps a little bit more preparation than others. As we move through that calendar year, we then start to pivot the work we do with students to look at supporting one-to-one on personal statement, course choice, university choice, all the good stuff we've heard about in the previous slides. And moving into September, you're now in year 13, it becomes about crafting the final drafts of personal statements. Admissions tests. So again, we do a lot of work with admissions tests for those applying for Oxford and Cambridge. So typically 12 sessions in the run up to admission test day. And as Rob said, it was yesterday and today. That's admissions test happening right now. The next part of our work is now an emphasis on university mock interviews. So again, 7 mock interviews are done for our children here. So that calendar year's worth of work, we feel it's important to give dedicated time, which is why it's on timetables, and it is guided. But obviously, the higher level university, the greater the expectation about what you will do. Hopefully, what this gives you, by the way, in October on the 15th, when you've applied, are very genuine snippets of evidence about your love of the subject. You can say, actually, now, I really love engineering because I read about Brel, for example, and his contributions, or I love English literature because I read Wilde, as we've heard earlier. Those little snippets can now be put in as meaningful statements of evidence about what you now know about your subject. You're moving into showing them that you're a bit of an undergraduate in this area, but you haven't actually got to university yet. You're thinking that way, and you will be an asset to that undergraduate tutorial group because of the perspective you have and what you've done before. So there we are. That's the Abbey Cambridge response to the demands of getting into top university.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm not, what you've outlined there, Julian, I think is so useful. Wherever the student is studying during their 6th form, to actually think about that development of subject knowledge and read around the subject and really understand what it's about, and to be able, as you say, to get to October and be confident that they actually know what it is they're looking to study. I think sometimes it's very easy to overlook the fact that the key aspect of an Oxbridge application really is the subject. You have to be passionate about your subject, and that's what the admissions tutors are going to be looking for. And they will definitely want to see that evidence. It's not enough to have a string of A stars across the board. They want students who are going to be really engaged and passionate, and good people to teach as well. Rob, you mentioned with the interviews, they are looking for students that they want to be in a tutorial with, that will engage with the subject. So thank you very much for that. So just finally then, let's look at our top tips. So your top tips for applying to Oxbridge. Perhaps we could just, if I could ask our panelists to address these points. So Julian, you've talked about this obviously already with the Abbey College approach, but is there anything you'd like to add to that? Start as early as possible.
Yeah, read. That would be the single piece of advice out of anything I've said today. Read, and if you don't know what to read, ask somebody who knows a bit more about this. If you're interested in medicine, see if you can grab 5 minutes with somebody who knows about this. If not, go on websites. We have reading lists, but read, and don't be satisfied by reading a book that's based on your curriculum, because your school will teach you that. You've got that covered. Look at popular novels, popular non-fiction, I beg your pardon. On the TV right now, Brian Cox, for example, is doing a great show on the universe. So get his book if you're interested in any area of physics, astronomy, and so on, and go from there. But I would say read and get into the habit of what a non-fiction book gives you, the story you get through in a non-fiction book. Or of course, if it is an art-based subject, then clearly there are fiction works that are analogous, if you like. But I would say read early, and pick books that you might find in a bookshop that are written for a lay person as a start. Don't look at undergraduate books, look at broadening your knowledge. And there are plenty of them these days.
Great advice, thank you very much. Rob, would you like to address the next couple of points in terms of researching your options?
Sure. I'd just like to thank Julian for his contribution there. It sounds a fantastic program he's offering there. And it resonates very much with the kind of things I do, not within the context of a school, but I certainly am I very much promote everything that's been said about producing what you might call added value. It sounds a bit artificial to put it that way, because the best students will be genuinely passionate about what they want to do and will be naturally inclined to read beyond the confines of their A-levels or IB or whatever they're doing. Yes, I think the other thing that I would also add, Julian has got this great program they've got going. If you're in school, I take the opportunity to do an EPQ, because that will give you an extra dimension, and also will give you something to talk about in your personal statement. It also demonstrates your research abilities. So I would very much urge people to think about that. But yes, read outside your subject. A lot of what I do is advising people on reading material. There is actually quite a lot. Universities, Oxford and Cambridge, do publish recommended reading. I will also go to I have a huge network of tutors that I've been associated with over a great many years in Oxford. And so I will go to my colleagues and ask their advice about individual students. I will speak about the student profile, and I will ask what they advise. The student has a particular interest in a particular area. That's the other thing I would advise students to do. Follow your interest. Or this kind of extracurricular reading should not really be imposed from outside. Although I respect entirely what Julian has said. I think it's fantastic that he's got the books on site to actually offer the students to read, because sometimes you offer a student a book to read and you're not quite sure if they've gone ahead and got hold of it or not. But do follow what interests you personally. The admissions tutors are looking for your potential, and if you are genuinely interested in a particular area of the subject you're aiming for, then you're more likely to make significant progress in that area of study and research. The other thing, of course, is to we haven't mentioned, when you're doing research, read the specs for your subject in the university prospectuses, which you'll find online. Know what it is the university is looking for, and make a list of the areas. Be businesslike about it. At the end, of course, like point number 5, because what I've just described sounds quite intense, but I suppose it is very much in line, though, with what I've said about following your own personal interests. And there are a great many, for instance, engineering is so broad that there are a great many avenues you could explore in that particular subject. So yes, research, very important.
Thank you very much. So I'd like now, we haven't got very long left, but I would like now to address some of the questions our participants have put to us during it. So can I bring in Duncan at this stage? Would you like to bring out some of the questions that have arisen in the chat and the Q&A, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Rob and Julian, so far. Yeah, we've got a few interesting questions through. I'll try and whiz through them. I think perhaps if I could address the first one to Julian, please. There was a question. It's kind of a twofold question here. I think, why do you have to choose either Oxford or Cambridge? I think as in, why can't you apply to both? And also, how would you go about choosing between the two?
Was that meant for Julian?
Yes, please.
That's a very good question. Why? Well, I think that's a question to ask Oxford and Cambridge. Rob, you might be better placed to answer that one.
I don't know. This is a rule that has applied for a great many years. It goes back a long, long time. But I suppose if you think about there would be immense. I think the process would be phenomenally complicated if you had, because presumably the top students will get offers from both universities, and then there would be a long process of them maybe deciding which one to pick. I don't know. If we go back quite a while, it used to be the case that actually you could apply to both in one sense, that if you were rejected by one, your application would be sent to the other. I don't think many people got in that way, but the simple answer to the question is those are the rules. You can only apply to one. The UCAS system will not allow you to apply to both. It will just it will signal that you've made an error in your application if you attempt to. So yeah, you have to decide.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. And I guess then if we throw it back to Julian, I mean, how would you decide between the two, given you can only apply to one?
Yeah, if you're the kind of student that's serious about this, what you will be doing is doing your research. You will have been doing all that lovely reading we're talking about. You'll be developing some ideas about your subject that you'd like to explore more with genuine interests. Part of that, you will be looking in detail about what the offering is at those universities, and you will make your decision based on that. Because an advisor will not decide for you. An advisor will tell you, well, these are the kinds of things you can use as a basis of a decision, because it's not just deciding between Oxford and Cambridge, it's deciding, okay, well, let's say you've chosen Cambridge University, actually, which one of the 31 colleges will you apply to? So there's a great deal of work the student should do themselves in finding out what are the differences between these universities. And ideally, if you can come and have a look at the different colleges, that'll help to a degree in giving you an idea of what the feel is there. But ultimately, if you are of this caliber, you should be the kind of person that is looking themselves to find what is required to make that decision about which college, which university, and indeed which course, because that's a fine-grained decision as well in many cases about which course. It's the same process, by the way, in deciding which other 4 universities you'd apply to. You know, would you apply to Bristol or Manchester or Durham? It's all part of the same process, and all schools will have advisors that will help guide the child, but the child does need to put the research in themselves, to read for themselves on the website. In the old days, it was hard copy prospectuses where you try and get a feel for which would be more suitable for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Sage advice. Well, maybe this one's probably best for Rob. Scholarships. Can you apply for scholarships? How tough is it to get them?
Yeah, it depends. Certain schools have certain scholarships that are attached to certain colleges, and you would need to, it depends what you're studying, obviously. There are such things as open scholarships as well. To be quite honest, there used to be exams that were specifically designed to award scholarships at entrance level, but I'm not sure that they exist anymore. I know that scholarships are awarded for during the course of your course, once you've got in, for excellence of work. I don't have anything I can offer at this stage about scholarships in terms of at entry level at present.
But perhaps I could just interject there. I believe the system, if it hasn't changed, is that based on the entrance tests,
yeah,
and the offers made, colleges and just offer discretionary scholarships and exhibitions. I don't think, you know, when many parents ask about scholarships, they're looking in terms of fees. I would say that the scholarships and exhibitions, certainly at Oxford, are more of an honorary title. I think the scholars wear longer gowns when they go to dinner, and things like that, and have certain privileges within the college. So it's certainly something worth asking specific colleges about, I think, if you're applying and interested. Can I just pick up actually on something that you mentioned, Rob, earlier about the EPQ, because I think some of our attendees may not be familiar with that, but it was a very interesting point. The EPQ is the Extended Project Qualification, which is now offered by a lot of schools that teach the A-level curriculum, and it's an independent research project that students complete over the course of their sixth form. And it really gives them the opportunities to undertake independent research and presentation. So the topics are very, very wide. Students can choose something that interests them. And again, very useful for demonstrating to universities those research skills. So I just thought it was worth mentioning that there.
Could I just say one thing about choice of between Oxford and Cambridge? Just one little point I'd like to make. Very often the subjects are slightly packaged slightly differently. If you want to study, for instance, economics, at Oxford you'd have to do it in conjunction with philosophy and politics, at least in your first year, or with management. At Cambridge you can do economics as a straightforward subject. That could be one consideration you would make about choosing between one and the other. The other thing I think that's worth considering is the Cambridge Tripos system, where the exam falls into two parts, and it is possible to do your part one in one subject and do part two in another subject. So somebody might say take English literature maybe for part one, and then do part two in, say, a subject like law. It's not an automatic thing that can be done. It would need to be done with the discretion of the university. But that is something that gives Cambridge a certain sort of distinction that's not available at Oxford.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Rob. But I think it sort of goes back to what you were both saying about, you know, the importance of researching really, and sort of really, you know, what does your course offer? You know, what are you going to be studying? It's easy not to really concentrate on that and just think, oh, I just want to go to Oxbridge, but actually what's it going to mean for you in terms of your experience as a student? Sorry, Duncan, do we have any more questions?
Well, I'm just aware we're running a little bit over now, Mary. So I suggest perhaps apologies to anyone whose questions haven't been answered yet, but if they send them through to us at Info Education Advisors there, we'll try and answer ourselves or fall back on Rob and Julian to answer if we're not quite sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it just leaves me to thank both Rob and Julian very much indeed for your contributions today. I hope it's been useful for our participants. And as Duncan said, we are available to follow up on any questions that you may have. We'd be delighted to tell you more about our services as independent advisors. We can help you with both school and university applications. So please do get in touch if we can be of any further assistance. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.